Welcome to the grandest stage on earth where legends are carved in sweat and tears. The BTS Arirang tour has been a whirlwind of emotions, but day 2 held a mystery no one, not even the members, saw coming. What could possibly make a world-class performer freeze in his tracks? Was it a technical glitch, or something far more human? As we count down the most explosive highlights, prepare yourself for a revelation that redefined the bond of family. Who stole the spotlight before the show even began? Let's dive into the secret files of the Arirang tour. Number 7. The Echoes of Busan, a Mother's Silent Prayer. The air inside the stadium during the second day of the Arirang World Tour was thick with a mixture of residual adrenaline from the previous night and the clinical, cold precision of a high-stakes technical rehearsal, yet beneath the surface of the humming amplifiers and the rhythmic tapping of drum kits, a secret was being woven into the very fabric of the venue that would leave the world's most graceful performer utterly breathless. You see, the Arirang Tour wasn't just another series of concerts, it was a conceptual masterpiece designed to bridge the gap between ancient Korean heritage and the futuristic neon landscape of 2026, and for Park Jimin, this specific stop represented the pinnacle of his artistic evolution, where every high note was a testament to a decade of relentless sacrifice. As the sun began its slow descent over the horizon, casting long, amber shadows across the empty seats that would soon hold tens of thousands of screaming fans, the soundcheck began with its usual intensity, but there was a strange, almost electric tension among the staff members who were constantly whispering into their headsets and glancing toward the darkened wings of the stage. Jimin, ever the perfectionist, was focused on the floor monitors, his brow furrowed as he signaled to the sound engineers for more gain in his inner ear monitors, completely unaware that the logistics of this particular soundcheck had been altered by a very special request that bypassed the usual management protocols. Historically, the families of the members rarely attended soundchecks because it is a raw, unpolished, and often stressful environment where the idol persona is stripped away to reveal the exhausted human underneath. But today was different because the Arirang theme had resonated deeply with Jimin's roots in Busan, a city known for its rugged spirit and the unwavering strength of its mothers. To understand the gravity of this moment, one must reflect on the cultural phenomenon of the Korean mother, a figure who embodies the concept of Han and Jeon, representing a deep, sacrificial love that often remains unspoken but is felt in every bowl of soup and every late-night prayer. As Jimin began the opening lines of his solo piece, his voice echoing through the hollow stadium with a haunting clarity that seemed to vibrate the very air molecules, a small, dignified figure was escorted through the VIP tunnels, bypassing the layers of security that usually guard the inner sanctum of a BTS production. The stadium itself was a marvel of 2026 engineering, featuring a 360-degree immersive sound system that allowed even the faintest whisper on stage to be heard with crystal clarity in the highest rafters, making the environment both intimate and terrifyingly exposed. The staff members, who usually move with the mechanical efficiency of a clockwork toy, were noticeably hovering, their eyes darting between the monitors and the silhouette standing in the shadows of Section 102, a section that was supposed to be completely vacant during the rehearsal. Jimin was in the middle of a complex vocal run, his eyes closed to better feel the resonance of the music, reflecting on the grueling journey from a small dance academy in Busan to the global stage, a journey that was paved by the quiet support of a woman who would let him go so he could fly. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in a stadium before the fans arrive, a heavy, expectant silence, and within that silence, the presence of his mother was like a lighthouse beam cutting through a thick fog, though he hadn't seen her yet. The narrative of the Arirang tour was built on the idea of returning home, of finding one's soul amidst the chaos of fame, and as Jimin hit the crescendo of the song, he felt a strange, inexplicable warmth, a sudden shift in the energy of the room that made his heart skip a beat even though he was physically exhausted from the back-to-back performances. He had been told his family couldn't make it until the final show of the leg due to travel complications, a white lie crafted by the members and the staff to ensure the surprise would be nothing short of legendary. Can you imagine the mental fortitude required to perform at this level while carrying the weight of a global brand, only to have that professional veneer cracked by the simple, overwhelming presence of home? The edutainment value here lies in the psychology of performance. Experts suggest that emotional anchors, such as a loved one's presence, can either skyrocket a performer's dopamine levels or cause a temporary freeze response as the brain struggles to reconcile the professional setting with a personal connection. As the last note faded into the rafters, Jimin wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked out into the vast, dark expanse of the seating area, his eyes squinting against the harsh glare of the work lights, still not realizing that the most important person in his life was watching him from the gloom, her eyes filled with tears of pride that no camera could ever fully capture. The stage was set, the technical cues were met, but the human element was about to take over in a way that would make Day 2 of the Arirang tour go down in history as the day the filter singer finally saw the one person who truly knew the boy behind the mask. How would you react if, in the middle of your most stressful workday, the person you missed most appeared in the shadows? The suspense was building, the members were stifling their grins, and the countdown to a heart-stopping revelation had officially begun. This wasn't just a rehearsal anymore, it was a rendezvous with destiny, hidden in the mundane tasks of a soundcheck, proving that even for a global icon, the smallest shadow can hold the biggest surprise. As the lights shifted for the next song, a figure moved slightly in the distance, and for a split second, Jimin's eyes locked onto a familiar silhouette, a moment of recognition that felt like a bolt of lightning through his soul, setting the stage for number 6 where the real shock begins to unfold. What happens when a global superstar realizes his mother is the only audience member that truly matters in a stadium built for 70,000? Stay tuned, because the emotional roller coaster is just reaching its peak. Number 6. The Silent Silhouette, A Mother's Love in the Darkness. As the rehearsal transitioned from the haunting melodies of the opening to the high-octane choreography of Set Me Free PT2, the atmosphere inside the stadium shifted from ethereal to industrial, with the heavy bass of the 2026 Ultra subwoofers rattling the very floorboards beneath Jimin's feet, yet his focus remained laser-sharp on the technical markers taped to the stage floor. This was the Arirang Tour, a production so massive that it required over 200 local crew members and a proprietary AI-driven lighting system that could track a performer's pulse to adjust the strobes in real time, creating a symbiotic relationship between the artist and the arena. Jimin, known for his ethereal grace and a work ethic that often borders on the obsessive, was deep in the flow state, a psychological phenomenon where an individual becomes so immersed in an activity that time seems to dilate and the self vanishes, which is exactly why the sudden appearance of a familiar figure in the lower bowl of the stadium felt like a glitch in the matrix. To understand the magnitude of this surprise, one must realize that the Arirang Tour was more than just a musical event. It was a cultural reclamation, using the traditional folk song Arirang, a symbol of Korea's endurance and heartbreak, as a metaphor for BTS's own journey through the gauntlet of global superstardom. As Jimin moved through a series of sharp, percussive transitions, his eyes scanned the dead zones of the stadium, those empty seats where the shadows pool and the echoes hide, and that's when he saw her. A small, unassuming woman sitting perfectly still amidst a sea of frantic staff members and hulking security guards. The contrast was jarring. While everyone else was moving with the frenetic energy of a production in crisis, she sat with a posture of such profound peace and maternal pride that it felt like a holy sanctuary had been carved out of the chaos. Scientifically speaking, the human brain is hardwired to recognize the facial geometry and movement patterns of a parent within milliseconds, even in low-light conditions, a survival instinct that dates back to our earliest ancestors, and for Jimin, this recognition was instantaneous and devastatingly emotional. His breath hitched, a cardinal sin for a vocalist of his caliber, and for a split second, the meticulously rehearsed choreography faltered as his center of gravity shifted, not because of a physical slip, but because his heart had suddenly doubled in weight. The other members, particularly V and Jungkook, who were standing by the soundboard pretending to check their own monitors, were watching Jimin's face through the 8K telephoto lenses of the stage cameras, stifling their laughter as they witnessed the precise moment his global idol facade crumbled to reveal the Busan Boy underneath. In the world of high-stakes entertainment, the soundcheck is the last line of defense against the chaos of the live show, a place where mistakes are caught and corrected, but there is no manual for how to handle the sudden, overwhelming presence of the woman who used to pack your lunchboxes while you dreamed of a world you now hold in the palm of your hand. The narrative of Arirang is one of crossing the mountain pass, a journey of hardship and eventual triumph, and as Jimin looked at his mother, he realized she was the one who had walked that pass with him long before the world knew his name, back when he was just a boy with big dreams in a small dance studio. The technical crew, unaware of the personal drama unfolding, continued to trigger the pyrotechnic tests, sending bursts of golden sparks into the air that illuminated his mother's face for a fleeting second, showing the tears glistening on her cheeks as she watched her son command the stage with the power of a modern-day god. It is a well-documented fact in sports psychology that having a support pillar in the audience can increase an athlete's performance by up to 15% due to the release of oxytocin, but for an artist like Jimin, who pours his entire soul into every gesture, the presence of his mother was almost too much to bear, threatening to break the dam of his professional composure right then and there. He continued to sing, his voice now imbued with a raw, trembling quality that wasn't in the original arrangement, a vocal texture that the sound engineers would later describe as once in a lifetime, as he directed his entire performance toward that one specific seat in section 102. The edutainment aspect here is fascinating, how the Arirang song itself has over 3,600 variations across the Korean peninsula, each telling a story of longing, and in this moment, Jimin was creating a 3,601st version, a silent dialogue between a son and his mother through the medium of cutting-edge pop music. The stadium's internal climate control was set to a crisp 18 degrees Celsius to keep the equipment from overheating, yet Jimin felt a heat radiating from within his chest that no air conditioner could touch, a literal burning of the heart that is often cited in classical literature as the physical manifestation of pure devotion. He was caught in a tug-of-war between his duty to the tour and his instinct as a son, a moment of beautiful vulnerability that humanizes the colossal machine of BTS, reminding us that behind the billion-streamed hits and the record-breaking tours, there are still children who just want their parents to be proud of them. As the song reached its final, soaring bridge, Jimin didn't look at the cameras, he didn't look at the choreographer, and he didn't look at the empty VIP boxes. He kept his eyes locked on that silent silhouette, his mother, who had traveled through the secrecy of the night to witness the man he had become. This was the ultimate on-the-spot moment, a candid, unscripted explosion of humanity in an industry that is often accused of being overly manufactured, proving that no amount of stagecraft can compete with the power of a mother's gaze. As the final note rang out and the lights dimmed for the next transition, Jimin stood there in the semi-darkness, his chest heaving, his microphone held loosely at his side, as he tried to process the fact that the person who had seen him at his weakest was now seeing him at his strongest. But wait, if his mother was here, who else was hiding in the wings, and how deep did this conspiracy of love actually go? The members were beginning to close in, their smirks widening, and the real confrontation was about to begin, leading us directly into the heart-pounding revelations of number 5. Can a superstar maintain his cool when his childhood world collides with his global empire? What happened when the music finally stopped and the lights came up, revealing the full extent of the surprise that had been months in the making? Get ready, because the next chapter of this Arirang journey is about to get even more personal. Number 5. The Mastermind's reveal, a betrayal of brotherhood. The moment the track 4 Set Me Free P2 faded, the silence that rushed back into the arena was almost deafening, but it wasn't the silence of an empty room, it was the heavy, pregnant silence of a secret finally coming to light. Jimin stood there, his breath still coming in ragged gasps, his blonde hair, damp with sweat, clinging to his forehead as he stared into the dimness of Section 102. You could see it on the giant 8K LED screens that towered above the stage. His eyes, usually so sharp and focused, were wide with a mixture of disbelief and a vulnerability that rarely makes it past the editing room. Behind him, Kim Namjoon, the group's leader and the architect of so many of their milestones, was adjusting his own ear pack with a smirk that told the entire story. He was the mastermind who had coordinated with Jimin's father and the HYBE logistics team to sneak her into the stadium through the kitchen staff entrance. This wasn't just a simple visit, this was a high-level covert operation that involved falsified travel itineraries and a fake rehearsal schedule that Jimin had been following religiously for weeks. The Arirang tour in 2026 was defined by its homecoming narrative, a concept where the members explored their roots before embarking on their next chapter, and what is more rooted than the bond between a child and the one who gave them life. As Jimin's brain tried to process the visual data, his Sadaori or Busan dialect, which usually only surfaces when he's extremely comfortable or incredibly startled, slipped out as he whispered a Fadiyama into his live microphone. That single word, amplified by the state-of-the-art Dolby Atmos stadium system, echoed through the rafters, sounding less like a global superstar and more like a lost boy finding his way home in the dark. The other members couldn't hold it back anymore. Jeon, who had been practicing his vocals in the opposite wing, let out his signature windshield wiper laugh, the sound booming through the speakers and breaking the spell of tension. It's fascinating from an edutainment perspective to look at the in-group/out-group dynamics here. The members had formed a temporary in-group secret society, leaving Jimin as the out-group target of this benevolent prank, a psychological play that strengthens group cohesion but can lead to a momentary cognitive overload for the subject. Jimin began to pace the stage, a nervous habit he has whenever he's overwhelmed, his boots clicking rhythmically against the reinforced plexiglass floor that housed thousands of tiny LED fibers designed to simulate a field of wildflowers during the Arirang medley. The stadium's technical director, observing from the control booth, later mentioned that the biometric sensors in Jimin's smart suit showed his heart rate spiking to 145 beats per minute, not from the dance, but from pure, unadulterated shock. The narrative of the Arirang song itself often deals with Gogai or the mountain passes one must cross, and in this moment, Jimin was crossing his own emotional pass, moving from the professional sphere of a world tour back into the intimate sphere of family. To make the surprise even more elaborate, the staff had arranged for the Arirang holographic projection, a 2026 tech staple that creates lifelike 3D images in midair, to briefly flicker with images of Jimin's childhood in Busan. A subtle hint he had completely missed during the earlier part of the rehearsal because he was too focused on his footwork. The level of detail in this conspiracy was staggering. Even his personal stylist had been in on it, ensuring his rehearsal outfit was comfortable enough for the emotional breakdown they all knew was coming. Imagine the pressure of being the world's most watched man, only to realize that your most important critic and your biggest fan has been sitting in the dark, watching your every mistake and every triumph with a love that doesn't care about chart positions or ticket sales. This is where the on-the-spot style reflection kicks in. What does it mean to be seen in an age where everyone is looking at you through a screen? For Jimin, being seen by his mother in the raw, unedited environment of a soundcheck was a validation that no Daesang or Grammy could ever replicate. He finally dropped his guard, the mic stand leaning precariously as he pointed toward the seat, his voice cracking as he asked, "Since when? How long have you been there?" The members gathered around him, Seokjin throwing an arm over his shoulder, teasing him about how easy he was to trick, while Taeyoung watched with that boxy smile of his, knowing exactly how much this meant to his best friend. This moment wasn't just a highlight for a documentary, it was a profound psychological anchor for the rest of the tour, a reminder that no matter how far the Arirang road took them, the starting point was always home. The stadium lights began to slowly rise, transitioning from the moody rehearsal blue to a warm, inviting gold, finally illuminating the face of the woman who had traveled across the country in secret just to see her son do what he was born to do. But as the joy settled in, a new question arose: if his mother was here, what did this mean for the setlist, and would Jimin be able to hold it together for the emotional climax of the show? The surprise was only the beginning of a chain reaction that would change the energy of the entire Arirang tour leg. Are you ready to see how a mother's presence can turn a polished pop show into a raw, spiritual experience? The mystery of the Arirang surprise is far from over, and number 4 is about to reveal the secret pact that almost ruined the whole thing. Number 4. The Soulmate's Secret, V's Heart-Stopping Near Miss. To truly understand the chaotic beauty of the Arirang tour's second day, we have to look through the eyes of the man who arguably knows Jimin's soul better than anyone else, Kim Taeyoung, also known as V. While the world sees them as global icons, within the inner sanctum of BTS, they are the 95-liners, a duo bound by a decade of shared dreams, tears, and an almost telepathic connection that makes keeping a secret of this magnitude nearly impossible. As the soundcheck progressed through the mid-tempo rhythms of the Arirang reimagined tracks, V was engaged in a high-stakes psychological game, acting as the primary shield to prevent Jimin from spotting his mother too early. You see, the stage for the 2026 Arirang tour was a marvel of modern architecture, featuring a glass river walkway that used transparent OLED technology to simulate the flowing waters of the Han River beneath the members' feet, and V knew that Jimin's habit of looking down to check his footwork would eventually lead his gaze toward the VIP lower tiers. From an edutainment perspective, it's fascinating to analyze the mirror neuron theory in this context. V's own anxiety was skyrocketing because his brain was simulating Jimin's potential shock, creating a feedback loop of nervous energy that threatened to blow the entire operation. Earlier that morning, during the pre-soundcheck briefing in the green room, V had nearly tripped over his own words when Jimin asked why he was being unusually clingy and why he kept checking his phone every 30 seconds. V had to think on his feet, using his actor's intuition to feign a technical complaint about his haptic feedback vest, a piece of 2026 wearable tech that allows performers to feel the bass through their skin, which served as a perfect distraction. The Arirang tour was built on the philosophy of Inyeon, the Korean concept of fate and the invisible threads that connect people across lifetimes, and V felt those threads tightening as the clock ticked toward the revelation. Throughout the soundcheck, V was strategically positioning himself to block Jimin's line of sight, often initiating spontaneous V-Live-style antics that seemed like his usual playful self but were actually calculated maneuvers to keep Jimin's focus on the center stage. Imagine the pressure of holding a secret that you know will change the entire emotional trajectory of your best friend's night, while simultaneously having to hit every mark and vocal cue for a production that costs millions of dollars per hour to run. The stadium's atmosphere was a high-tech cocoon. The 2026 Aurasync lighting system was currently calibrating the purple and gold spectrums, creating a hazy, dreamlike shimmer that V hoped would further obscure his mother's silhouette in the stands. During the bridge of Inner Child, V glanced toward section 102 and saw Jimin's mother sitting there, her face a portrait of quiet dignity, and he felt a lump in his throat that made his next note waver, a rare moment of technical imperfection that Jimin immediately noticed with a questioning look. This is the on-the-spot level of detail you won't find in the official tour DVD, the secret 95-line language of eye contact where V had to lie with his eyes to his brother for the first time in years. The complexity of the Arirang setlist was another hurdle. The songs were arranged in a narrative arc of departure, wandering, and return, and V realized that Jimin was currently in the wandering phase, both artistically and literally, as he roamed the stage unaware that his return was already sitting in the fourth row. Reflection on this moment reveals the deep maturity of the members in 2026. They weren't just idols anymore, they were curators of each other's happiness, willing to endure the stress of a massive lie to deliver a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. As the rehearsal for Blue and Gray began, a song that always carries a heavy emotional weight, V watched Jimin's posture soften, his movements becoming more fluid and vulnerable, and he realized that the presence of his mother was already being felt on a subconscious level, even before the visual confirmation. The edutainment value here lies in the psychology of presence, where the mere proximity of a primary caregiver can lower cortisol levels in an individual, even if that presence is not yet consciously acknowledged. V was essentially watching a scientific experiment in real time. Would the surprise provide a boost of adrenaline, or would it cause an emotional overload that might hinder the performance? The technical crew in the Arirang Command Center were also on edge, as they had been instructed to keep the follow spots away from the lower bowl to maintain the surprise, a request that went against every safety protocol in the stadium handbook. V's heart was pounding so hard he was worried his internal microphone would pick up the rhythm, a thumping bassline of brotherly love and terrifying suspense that mirrored the traditional drum beats of the Arirang folk song. He saw Jimin start to drift toward the stage left wing, the exact direction of the surprise, and V had to quickly intervene by striking a dramatic pose for a phantom camera, forcing Jimin to turn around and laugh, effectively steering him back to the safe zone for another 5 minutes. This wasn't just a concert rehearsal, it was a high-stakes ballet of deception and devotion, proving that the bond between the members had only deepened with age and global fame. As the sun finally dipped below the stadium's rim, casting the interior into a deep, cinematic blue, V knew the window for the secret was closing, and the emotional payoff was just seconds away. He looked at Jeon and RM, giving a subtle nod that the target was in position, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his earpiece for the final sequence. Have you ever had to keep a secret so big it felt like your chest might burst, all while the person you're keeping it from is looking you right in the eye? V survived that pressure, but the fallout of the reveal was something even he wasn't fully prepared for. What happened when the music finally cut out and V was forced to step back and let the two worlds collide? The next rank is where the tears finally break the dam, but for now, the tension in the stadium was at a literal breaking point. Can a friendship survive such a beautiful betrayal of trust, or would the shock be too much for Jimin to handle in the middle of a world tour? The countdown continues, and the mystery of the Arirang mother is about to reach its most heart-wrenching peak. Number 3. The mask falls, a child of Busan returns to his mother's arms. The air in the stadium during the transition between Set Me Free PD2 and the Arirang medley was so still you could hear the faint hum of the 2026 Quantum Flow air filtration system working to keep the stage at a perfect temperature. But for Park Jimin, the world had suddenly gone completely silent in a way that had nothing to do with acoustics and everything to do with the heart. He stood at the edge of the extended stage, his silhouette framed by the colossal 8K LED monoliths that were currently projecting a slow-motion sequence of traditional Korean inkwash paintings, but his eyes were fixed on a single, unmoving point in the lower bowl where a woman was standing up, her hands clasped over her heart in a gesture of pure, maternal devotion. This was the pinnacle of the Arirang tour's emotional narrative, a tour designed to celebrate the group's homecoming to their roots after years of global dominance, and yet, the most profound homecoming was happening right here, in the middle of a technical rehearsal. To understand the sheer magnitude of this shock, one must reflect on the grueling path Jimin took from the Busan High School of Arts to the center of the global pop zeitgeist. He was the boy who would stay up until 4 a.m. perfecting a single dance move, fueled by the quiet support of a mother who never asked for fame, only for his happiness. As the Arirang melody, a haunting, modernized version played on a traditional gayageum but layered with deep, cinematic sub-bass, began to swell through the stadium's 360-degree immersive soundstage, Jimin's professional mask didn't just slip, it shattered into a million pieces. The 2026 Orisync biometric sensors built into his performance vest began to transmit data to the control booth that showed his pulse leaping from a resting state to a frantic 150 beats per minute, a physical manifestation of the emotional tsunami that occurs when the brain's performance mode is suddenly hijacked by the raw power of the limbic system. The narrative of Arirang is fundamentally about the Gogai, or the mountain pass that one must cross to find peace, and as Jimin looked at his mother, he realized he had crossed his final mountain. He didn't say a word, he simply dropped his microphone, a custom-weighted 2026 model that landed on the reinforced plexiglass stage with a resonant thud that echoed like a heartbeat through the arena, and covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with the weight of a decade's worth of missed holidays, long-distance phone calls, and the heavy burden of being a global icon. In that moment, the on-the-spot lens reveals something the cameras usually miss, the terrifying loneliness of success. Here was a man who could sell out stadiums in seconds, yet he looked completely small and vulnerable, a son who just wanted to be seen by the woman who knew him before he was Jimin of BTS. The other members, who had been hiding in the wings, finally stepped out, but they didn't approach him yet. They stood in a semicircle of solidarity, their own faces glowing in the soft amber light of the stage, witnessing a reunion that was more powerful than any choreography they had ever performed. From an edutainment perspective, this is a masterclass in the psychology of unconditional positive regard, a concept developed by Carl Rogers which suggests that the presence of someone who loves us without conditions can act as a profound psychological stabilizer, especially for high-stress individuals like Jimin. As his mother began to walk down the aisle toward the stage, her path illuminated by the glass river floor panels that suddenly switched from a cool blue to a warm, sun-drenched gold, the stadium felt like a cathedral. The technical crew, many of whom were veterans of the 2020 map of the Seoul era and had seen everything the industry had to throw at them, were seen wiping their eyes at the soundboards, the cold precision of the tour's logistics melting away in the face of such raw humanity. The Arirang tour was built on the idea of the return, but it wasn't until this moment that the concept truly came to life. It wasn't about returning to a country, but returning to the arms that first held you. When she finally reached the stage's edge, Jimin practically collapsed onto his knees, reaching down to grab her hands, his blonde hair, still damp from the rehearsal, hanging low as he wept openly, his voice caught in a cycle of "Iyama and Mayanhi, I'm sorry." It was a moment of profound Han, that uniquely Korean feeling of sorrow and hope intertwined, as he apologized for all the time the world had stolen from them. Did you know that the Arirang song has over 3,600 variations across the Korean peninsula, each telling a different story of longing? In this moment, Jimin was writing the 3,601st version, a silent ballad of a son's return to his source. The contrast was staggering, the high-tech, multi-million-dollar stadium with its AI-driven lighting and 2026 holographic arrays, and in the center of it all, the simplest, most ancient human connection, a mother and her child. This is the reality of the Arirang legend. It's not just a song about a mountain pass, it's a song about the endurance of the spirit, and Jimin's spirit was being refilled in real time as his mother reached up to stroke his hair, her own tears falling onto the stage floor like diamonds under the spotlights. The members eventually closed the gap, Jeon and Namjoon placing their hands on Jimin's back to steady him, creating a protective human wall around the pair, shielding this private moment from the vast, empty darkness of the rest of the arena. This wasn't just a highlight for a future documentary, it was a soul reset for the entire group, a reminder that no matter how high they climbed the charts, the ground beneath their feet was always made of the love they left back in Busan, Seoul, and Daegu. As the Arirang instrumental reached its soaring, orchestral climax, the stadium's roof, a retractable 2026 design that could create an artificial night sky, slowly opened to reveal the real stars above, as if the universe itself wanted to witness the moment the world's most famous dancer finally stopped moving and just let himself be held. How many of us spend our entire lives running toward a finish line, only to realize that the person we wanted to see there has been cheering for us from the starting line all along? The mystery of how she was kept a secret for so long is one thing, but the real question is, what did she bring in that small, humble bag she was clutching so tightly? The emotional breakdown was just the beginning, because what happened next involves a secret Busan recipe and a moment of communal joy that would make even the coldest heart melt. Are you ready for the secret revealed in number 2, where the Arirang tour takes a turn into the most delicious and nostalgic memory of Jimin's life? The tension is breaking, but the best is yet to come. Number 2. The Scent of Busan, a Mother's Secret Dosirak. As the initial shock of the reunion began to settle into a warm, buzzing hum of collective joy, the focus of everyone in the stadium, from the high-tier security detail to the members themselves, shifted to the small, unassuming insulated bag that Jimin's mother had been clutching like a sacred relic throughout her secret journey. In the hyper-technological landscape of the 2026 Arirang tour, where the stage was a marvel of carbon fiber and holographic emitters, the sight of a slightly worn, floral-patterned Dosirak lunchbox was a jarring yet beautiful reminder of the world BTS had left behind to become legends. To understand the emotional weight of this moment, we have to look at the Proust effect, a psychological phenomenon where smells trigger intense, vivid memories of the past, often transporting an individual back to a specific moment in their childhood with startling clarity. As Jimin's mother slowly unzipped the bag, a scent began to waft through the sterile, air-conditioned environment of the arena, a rich, earthy aroma of sesame oil, fermented soy, and hand-rubbed garlic that stood in stark contrast to the smell of ozone and stage smoke that usually defined Jimin's workspace. Inside were several tiers of stainless steel containers filled with dwaegukbap, Busan-style pork soup, and a side of kakakdu, radish kimchi, that had been fermented exactly the way Jimin liked it, extra crunchy and slightly sweet. This wasn't just food, it was a time machine crafted by the hands of a woman who had watched her son grow from a hopeful dancer in a small Busan studio to a global icon whose every move was analyzed by millions. Jimin, who had spent the last few years dining in 5-star hotels and Michelin-starred restaurants across the globe, looked at the humble meal and felt a surge of jipbap, home-cooked meal, nostalgia that no luxury catering could ever hope to replicate. The edutainment value here is profound when we consider the role of soul food in Korean culture. It is often said that a mother's cooking contains sunmat, the taste of one's hands, a metaphysical ingredient that represents the love and labor poured into the preparation. As Jimin took his first bite, right there on the edge of the multi-million-dollar glass river stage, the 2026 Arirang biometric monitors in the control room picked up a fascinating shift in his physiological data. His cortisol levels, which are typically high during the high-pressure environment of a soundcheck, plummeted almost instantly, replaced by a massive spike in oxytocin and dopamine. It was a literal chemical homecoming triggered by the flavor of Busan. The other members couldn't help themselves. The Arirang tour was a grueling marathon, and the scent of authentic, home-cooked Busan cuisine was like a siren song. Jeon, the group's resident foodie, was the first to hover, his eyes widening as he recognized the specific shade of red in the kimchi, leading to a spontaneous family dinner in the middle of the stadium floor. Imagine the scene: 7 of the most famous men on the planet, dressed in cutting-edge performance gear embedded with fiber-optic sensors, sitting cross-legged on a stage that could simulate a thunderstorm, all passing around a plastic spoon to share a taste of a mother's love. This is the on-the-spot reality that the cameras rarely capture, the moments where the idol persona is completely discarded in favor of the son and brother roles. The narrative of the Arirang folk song is one of endurance through hardship, and as Jimin, he reflected on the early days in 2011 and 2012 when he would survive on convenience store snacks just to save a few extra minutes for dance practice, his mother's voice on the phone being his only connection to the warmth of home. The stadium's technical crew, observing through the 8K Spirit Cam system, later remarked that this was the most human they had ever seen the group. The high-stakes pressure of day 2 seemed to evaporate, replaced by a communal atmosphere of Jeon, the deep, uniquely Korean sense of social tie and affection. The edutainment aspect of this moment also touches on olfactory memory connectivity. The olfactory bulb is part of the brain's limbic system, a section so closely associated with memory and feeling that it's often called the emotional brain. For Jimin, the taste of that pork soup wasn't just a culinary experience. It was a sensory download of every hug, every encouragement, and every sacrifice his mother had made to get him to this stage. The contrast between the Arirang tour's grandiosity, with its 360-degree immersive sound and AI-driven light shows, and the simplicity of a metal lunchbox served as a powerful metaphor for the BTS journey. No matter how high they soared into the digital future of 2026, their hearts remained tethered to the physical, analog warmth of their families. Even the stadium's quantum flow air filtration system couldn't scrub the scent of Busan from the air, and for the rest of the soundcheck, the entire venue felt less like a cold arena and more like a cozy kitchen in a seaside town. This moment of shared vulnerability and nourishment was the secret fuel that would power Jimin through the most intense performance of his life. But it also raised a new question among the staff. With the emotional dam now completely broken, how would Jimin be able to perform the heartbreakingly beautiful Arirang finale without losing himself to tears? The food had healed his spirit, but the true test of his professional filter was yet to come. As the members finished the last of the soup, laughing and teasing each other with their mouths full, the lights began to dim for the final technical run-through, signaling that the time for family intimacy was drawing to a close and the time for global spectacle was about to begin. But what Jimin didn't know was that his mother hadn't just brought food, she had brought a message from his past that would be revealed during the final song of the night. Are you prepared for the ultimate revelation of the Arirang tour, the moment where the legend of the Busan Boy becomes a permanent part of music history? The countdown to the number 1 spot is almost over, and the ending is something you truly won't believe. Number 1. The Eternal Arirang, a masterpiece of the human spirit. The grand finale of this emotional odyssey didn't happen when the lights went up or when the cameras started rolling for the official concert. It happened in the final moments of that day 2 soundcheck. A moment so profound it redefined the legacy of the Arirang tour forever. After the tears had been wiped away and the scent of the Busan Dosirak still lingered in the air like a warm embrace, the group had to return to the task at hand, rehearsing the tour's titular track, Arirang, The Great Return. This version of the song was a 2026 masterpiece, an avant-garde fusion of traditional panzori storytelling and hyperpop aesthetics, featuring a 100-piece virtual orchestra projected via light-field technology that made it seem as if the spirits of the past were dancing alongside the 7 members. As the first notes of the bamboo flute echoed through the cavernous stadium, the atmosphere shifted from personal intimacy to a transcendent, spiritual experience because for the first time in his career, Jimin wasn't performing for a faceless crowd or a digital lens, he was performing for the woman who had first heard his voice in a small house in Busan. From an edutainment perspective, it's vital to understand the audience effect in social psychology, which suggests that the presence of a significant other can push an elite performer into a state of hyperfocus, where the physical body moves with a precision that defies conscious thought. Jimin, now standing at the center of the lunar bridge, a retractable stage element that hovered 20 feet above the ground, began his solo dance, and the technical crew in the control booth watched in stunned silence as his biometric data hit a flow state never before recorded in the tour's history. His movements were no longer just choreography. They were a physical translation of the Arirang legend, the story of a person crossing a mountain pass, carrying the weight of their history while looking toward a brighter horizon. The 2026 Aura-Sync lighting system, which was programmed to react to the emotional timbre of the vocals, began to pulse with a deep, royal purple and a soft, pearlescent white, creating a halo effect around Jimin that made him look less like a pop star and more like a celestial being returning to Earth. To make this moment even more legendary, the group's main dancer and hope of the team, Dosirak, had adjusted the final sequence to allow Jimin a moment of freestyle, a risky move in a production time to the millisecond, but one that allowed Jimin to direct his final, soaring high note directly toward his mother's seat. This was the on-the-spot moment of the century, the silence of 70,000 empty seats being filled by the sheer power of a son's gratitude. Scientifically, this is known as acoustic resonance optimization, where the performer uses the architecture of the space to amplify the emotional frequency of their voice, and on this day, the stadium felt like it was breathing with him. The narrative of Arirang is one of Han, the deep-seated sorrow, turning into Hyung, a spontaneous joy, and as Jimin executed a perfect triple-axel spin on the Glass River stage, he was the living embodiment of that transformation. But the real surprise, the number one shock that no one saw coming, was revealed during the song's bridge when the stadium's massive Neuralink screens, which usually display abstract art, suddenly switched to a live feed of Jimin's mother. The staff had secretly set up a point-of-view camera in her section, and for a few seconds, the entire group saw her face not just as a guest, but as the queen of the Arirang story. She wasn't cheering, she was standing with her eyes closed, her lips moving in what looked like a silent prayer, a moment of such raw, unshielded humanity that even the most cynical tech engineers were seen wiping their eyes at the soundboard. This was the ultimate edutainment lesson in the power of social capital, the idea that our greatest achievements are never truly ours alone, but are built on the invisible support of those who loved us before we were somebody. The impact of this soundcheck ripple effect was felt throughout the entire Arirang tour. The members later admitted in a 2027 documentary that Day 2 changed their energy signature, making the rest of the tour feel more like a family reunion than a professional obligation. Jimin's performance that day was later analyzed by dance historians as a cultural milestone, a moment where the barriers between K-pop globalism and Korean traditionalism were completely erased by the simple presence of a mother. As the final orchestral swell faded into a haunting, solo violin note, Jimin stood at the edge of the stage, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on his mother, and for 5 long seconds, there was a silence so profound it felt as if time itself had stopped to pay its respects. He didn't bow to the empty seats, he bowed to her, a deep, traditional Kunjeol bow that expressed more than any lyric ever could. This wasn't just the end of a soundcheck, it was the birth of a new legend in the BTS mythos, a story of how a global empire was brought to its knees by a mother's lunchbox and a son's love. The Arirang tour will be remembered for its technology, its scale, and its records, but for those who were there in the shadows of day 2, it will always be the day that Park Jimin found his way home in the middle of a world tour. How many of us can say we've truly arrived if we haven't remembered where we started? The mystery of the Arirang mother is a reminder that in the high-speed, high-tech world of 2026, the most powerful connection is still the one that doesn't require a Wi-Fi signal or a satellite, it just requires a heart that knows its way back. The final question remains, if this was just the soundcheck, can you even begin to imagine the explosive, raw energy that Jimin unleashed when the actual show began just a few hours later? The Arirang mountain was crossed, the song was sung, and the boy from Busan was finally, truly, set free. Stay tuned for our next deep dive, but for now, remember, always keep a seat open for the one who believed in you first.